what was discovered in the crime scene. Describe what you saw.
Mate, you'll need to have a look at the pot on the stove, which I did, which contained the head of John Price with a number of vegetables in it.
So we're talking a pot on the stove with water, a head, and
Yes.
vegetables in there.
And it had been cooked, yes. I had a look at the skin hanging on the doorway. I saw John Price's body inside.
Was it in
the
one piece?
Put him back together, that it would come off in one section. It was all whole, the end of the fingertips, the end of the toes.
Skin.
John Price had obviously been in bed. He'd been attacked with a large bladed wooden handled knife, basically a butcher's knife. He was making his way down the hallway while he's continually being stabbed. Says she can't remember anything. She's got no idea. When you interview someone, you spend a lot of eye contact with them, and generally not a lot comes out of that, especially when someone's saying I can't remember things. But sometimes you might have a pause and a little bit of a break, and you'll just catch their eye with your eye. And I did it on one occasion, it happened to me, and it left me with an impression that she knows. She's just not going there.
How did this investigation impact on you?
It's never left me, Gary, really. I live with it every day. It's one of those things,
The I Catch Killers podcast was a fresh start for me, as I left policing behind and started a new life. Over the years, we've laughed together, cried, and shared some powerful moments. Welcome to I Catch Killers.
Welcome back to part 2 of my chat with retired Detective Sergeant Bob Wells. Welcome back, Bob.
Thanks, Gary.
I'm glad you've come back.
Yes.
Not that you had anywhere to go.
That's
at this
all
stage.
good. That's all good.
If you listen to part 1 of our chat, we talked about Bob's career, a lot of which was spent out working in the bush as a country cop, and how he became a detective. When we finished off part 1 with Bob, we were talking about a crime scene he was called to where a man, John Price, had been murdered. We're going to pick up from that crime scene, and I think at the start of part 1 I gave a listener warning that it's fairly graphic details we're going to be talking about, so just forewarning, the nature of the crime was quite brutal and quite macabre. Bob, we had you at the scene. What was the address, or what was the town?
It was at Aberdeen. It was, I think, from memory now, it is 24 years ago. I think it was 25 St Andrews Street, Aberdeen.
Okay. So you're there. I'll just bring everyone up to date if they missed part 1. You've been called out. There's been concern for welfare because John didn't turn up for work.
Yes. And
he had told his workmates that, look, if I don't turn up, this lady I'm seeing, Katherine, is...
it's possibly I've been killed by her.
Been killed.
Yep.
They've turned up, door's shut, they see some blood at the front door, they call the cops go there, gain entry into the place, and they find John's skin hanging from a hook, and then they've looked further into the house. What else have they seen?
Well, they've gone to down the hallway, which there was a huge amount of blood in various splatters, as you would call it, and also with hand marks on it as well. They've found who we've since found to be Katherine Knight, comatose in the bed, which was John Price's bedroom. They've managed to sort of bring her around in a groggy state, took her out, sat on the back steps initially to the house, whilst they've decided that, look, this is something that the scene now needs to be sealed. Graham Furlonger was a former detective sergeant and then shift supervisor, knew the ropes as far as serious crimes go, and said this has got to be sealed off until we get the guys here from the crime scene.
Yep.
So, which when I got there, I just had a quick cursory look at what Gary and Scotty James had seen. Same thing.
Could you take in what you were seeing?
Well, you could take it in because it was right in front of you, but right there, and then you thought this is one out of the box. Mm. This is something that's going to not just be a short, sharp murder investigation, sheerly because of the scale of what had happened to the victim, because it was going to get out, And Graham, I remember Graham Furlonger did say to him, mate, you'll need to have a look at the pot on the stove, which I did, which contained the head of John Price with a number of vegetables stewing it. in it.
So we're talking a pot on the stove with water, a head, and
Yes.
vegetables in there.
And had been cooked, yes. So, and I was just saying, this is just got to be sealed off. It's one of those crime scenes. No one goes in, no one goes out. Scotty, just stay near the door, start a log, those sorts of things. Just that routine stuff that we would go through as a detective. And we...
You're saying routine, but Bob, when you go look into a kitchen and you're seeing, describe what you saw.
Well, I had a look at the skin hanging on the doorway. I saw John Price's body inside.
Was it in one piece?
Yeah, I was later on to find out from the forensic pathologist who put him back together that it would come off in one section. It was all whole.
Right.
The end of the fingertips, the end of the toes.
Skinned.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, you're right. And it was. So I then contacted the forensic services guys, Neil Raymond and Peter Muscio, and they were on their way. And I sort of had a conversation about what it was, and I think the wheels were ticking over in Neil Raymond's head particularly. And when they got there, Neil said, "Mate, we're going to need more than still photographs of this scene." He said, "My suggestion is it might take a while, but we need to get the video unit up from Sydney," which they did, and they methodically went through that crime scene by video with the video unit guys as they did their crime scene investigative work.
And what was discovered in the crime scene? Describe the crime scene.
Well, basically, John Price had obviously been in bed. He'd been attacked viciously with a large bladed wooden-handled knife, which got basically a butcher's knife, probably more a boning than a filleting knife, and he's obviously taken flight. And I'm having these soon described to me basically by the forensic service guys, scientific cops as I would call them in those days, and that he was making his way down the hallway while he's continually being stabbed, and probably through the forensic examination of the guy from Newcastle was that eventually he was struck a fatal blow through the back into the heart around short of the front door. He's managed to open the front door because there was blood-stained fingerprints. He was on the front. He's managed to get the front door open and about to get outside when he's obviously became deceased. And the front door was slammed shut, and he was obviously left to what was going to happen to him from there on.
So where was his body? You've described where his skin was.
Well, just inside the front door, there's like a lot of entranceways to houses. There's old cork tiles on the floor.
Yeah.
There was that section in there, and half onto the carpet where you stepped into the lounge room. His body was in there.
Right. And he was decapitated.
Yes.
Skinned.
Yes.
Any other injuries? Obvious injuries to him?
Oh, multiple stab wounds.
Yep.
More so noticeable through the post-mortem examination by, I'm trying to think of the forensic pathologist's name. Timothy was his first name. I'll think of it later. But yeah, he said, look, there's up to 37 stab wounds throughout his body.
Okay.
Which were evident also through the skin when he was put back together, basically.
Right. You've found Katherine Knight, as you described, her comatose, laying in the bed in John's bed, and then she's been taken out. Yes,
she was taken out, and actually, as I arrived, that was who was going into the ambulance
to
leave. Judy Simpson, who was.
Did you know at this stage you were going to be running the investigation?
Well, it was our area.
Yeah,
I was a detective.
Yeah.
That was my job.
So you assumed control of it.
Yes.
At that
well, that's why I was called, because the guy said, "Mate,
yeah.
I was a senior detective in the LAC, so that was my job."
Yep.
My job is to decide whether I'm going to do it or how we do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was my job. So, and that's my responsibility because that was my area.
Okay.
Everybody likes to have control their patch,
Yeah.
their area.
No, I understand. So,
Just some instructions to Judy, make sure they get some scrapings under her fingernails, different things, all those sorts of things that you.
she was under arrest?
She wasn't under arrest.
Right. She
was in custody, basically, I guess you would say, under the new terms. We're going back to 2000.
Okay.
But because she had a police officer with her, but she wasn't going anywhere because she was.
I won't bog you down in the nitty gritty.
Yeah, she was really groggy. She wasn't going anywhere, and she was taken to Maitland Hospital, where she was placed into the psychiatric ward.
Okay.
Because once the hospital found out why she was there, that she was put straight. They think there must be something mentally wrong with this woman because of what she alleges she's done. So she went to the psych ward where she was, I guess, tranquilised or medicated would be the word, I guess, because until we knew what was going on. And I think that was their decision as medical practitioners to continue to medicate her. But I think they medicated her also because she'd taken a lot of prescription medication, mainly painkillers, those sorts of things, but which we found out later through the investigation that it would have made her quite sick. It would have made her drowsy and put her to sleep, but it wasn't going to kill her. So obviously we've looked at we were looking at a potential murder-suicide if she passed away, but the doctor said, mate, she hasn't consumed enough to kill her, so she's going to eventually wake up. So how they medicated her through that to get her up. And basically she was never under guard in that psychiatric ward because they weren't going to let her out.
I've been speaking to people in there. It's secured area, isn't it?
Yes.
She can't get out.
So, as the investigator, so we were left with, she's not going anywhere. We've got this crime scene, which the guys have come and done. It was video recorded, and it was a matter of, we've got these guys said, mate, it was about time to start getting some statements and commencing a brief of evidence. So, and that's all we got about doing was, and as you know, in an investigation, one statement leads to another statement, leads to another statement.
Well, you'd be starting with these workmates and the person that called the police.
100%. And because it was like a little place like Aberdeen, it was a big thing. It was because everybody knows everybody. It's one of those small country towns again, where one happens in downtown Erskineville. Yep. Some people wouldn't bat an eyelid at it. Another murder, or some parts of Sydney. It's just but it was a big thing for a town like that, and of course, everybody went to everybody, and everybody's chin was wagging out of control, and people came forward and said, "Mate, I saw her. I saw her at 2:00, walking back towards the house. In her thongs." And I yelled out to her, but she just looked like she was in a trance, walking back to the house. This woman puts a dog out every morning at 2:00 in the morning, runs out in the lawn, has a leak, runs back inside. It just so happened that this morning, same thing.
Walking past.
She's walking back towards the house.
Yeah.
So there was just statement after statement after statement to build this brief because we knew there was probably going to be a number of days delay in getting an opportunity, if we were ever going to get an opportunity to interview her, whether she would have been capable to be interviewed. Because this is the big thing you think about, am I ever going to get a chance?
Yeah.
And anyway,
so in those days, you're gathering as much evidence as you can with the statements. Did it start to paint a picture in your mind?
Painted a picture that it wasn't rosy in the relationship.
Yep.
It painted a picture that they could have a blue at any time.
Yep.
But it didn't paint a picture of what had happened.
No.
It was just a domestic situation where they got on to start with. I think because it was a new relationship for them both again, and sex is a big part of a new relationship and those sort of things. So things are rosy. When you got down to the nitty gritty and a bit of reality sets in, things start to change a little bit for a lot of couples or people.
Yeah.
And I think, they'd been together for quite a while, so maybe it was just coming towards that natural end. And as I progressed through the information, I sort of got more of a clearer picture of why she may have taken such drastic measures as what she did.
In gathering the evidence, did you turn over her place?
Turned her place over down at with a search warrant down on the main highway in Aberdeen, and it was a house that was full of horror movies. Obviously had a fixation for all sorts of horror movies, all genres of horror.
What, video, DVDs?
Just, I think there was a lot of DVDs were sort of on the rise in that era, and DVDs were on the way out, but there was both. So moving to a more modern style collection than others, but it was all horror. There was a huge amount of stuffed animals throughout the house, but a huge library of horror movies.
How many are we talking?
Oh, you're probably talking 100 or more. Like they were
Bit creepy.
all that sort of stuff that people that are into horror.
And stuffed animals, as in toys.
No, like birds and eagles and all sorts of natural wildlife, fauna of Australia, those sorts of things. So it was sort of, and it was a dank, dark house, and there was, I think, a little bit of premeditation started to enter my mind because the evidence flowed that she was at his house in her car, then it was gone at a certain time of night. It was taken back to her house. It had driven right into the backyard of a place like it was a possession thing.
Yeah.
Someone around midnight, at a minute to midnight, was at Muswellbrook with his key card and took $500 out, waited for a minute past midnight to take another $500 out because he obviously had a limit of $500 on his account.
Premeditated.
So knew enough, was in the mind of enough to be able to go and do that sort of activity with his key card, and then because the key card was found back at the scene. Okay,
so this is prior or post the murder, you're thinking?
This is post the murder.
Okay.
And then she's gone back to the premises after getting rid of her. She's obviously gone to Muswellbrook.
Yep.
Taken the money out. Taken the cash somewhere to her home, I would imagine, or someone. Her car back to her own home and parked it right at the backyard so that it was on her property, and then was seen walking back to the scene at 2 a.m.
That's I would be thinking, putting the homicide hat on, how do we get to this? You'd be looking, that's good evidence to rebut any mental health issues, isn't it? She's
pretty switched on.
Yeah, it's like there's no insanity that as a defence when she's capable of, okay, well, I can withdraw money, I can cover the tracks, I know what I've done's wrong, and I'm going to try and cover my tracks.
But I think the money was possibly because of the attempt to take her own life.
Yeah. In
relation to the prescription medication, the money was for someone.
Right.
Because she had young children herself.
Okay.
That's a summation at that stage, but no money was ever found.
Right.
And that was the search of a car, the premises, the whole box and so. So whether someone else was involved or she'd been to see someone, that was not established at that stage.
So how many days after you've attended the crime scene are we looking at before you got to speak to her?
That afternoon the afternoon of the next day, because we worked all through that first night. And at the end of the next day, I sort of had a bit of an episode where I thought that this was getting a bit much, So I was sort of heading home, and I sort of took a bit of a left turn and went down to. I rang Phil Lloyd, who was a prosecutor at Newcastle, and a well-respected prosecutor, and he said, "Mate, come down home, and we'll have a couple of beers, and we'll just see how things work." So I went down to Phil's house, and we spent some time, and said, "Look," I said, "I think I'm going to get a chance to interview this woman, and I'm thinking that I might make applications if I can get the video unit, because it was only ever going to be done in the hospital." And Phil said, "That's a good idea. What we'll do is we'll get the video unit," and I'll come up that day and we'll interview her, or you can interview her. And he said, "I'll wait outside." But he just put me at ease a little bit to say, "Mate, it's not going to get on top of you. We've only got one person to interview." So I took Phil's guidance and appreciated it very much, and said, "Righto." So that sort of perked me up a little bit more confidence. So about 3 days later, I got the opportunity to interview her at Maitland Hospital.
Okay, so you went in there with a video operator?
Well, first off, I made sure I had plenty of paperwork from the hospital to say that she's able to be interviewed. Yeah. She's aware. She's got all the faculties about her. She's not showing any signs of. She'd been assessed by psychiatrists too. Said that, look, she's fine. She's lucid. She understands. She's alert. She
can receive, retain, relay.
That's
information.
So she can be interviewed. And,
okay.
She had her barrister and young solicitor there, and the barrister said, "Look, it won't take long." She says she can't remember anything, so just go in there and run through the motions. She's going to tell you she doesn't know what happened. She's got no idea, and so you'll only be in there 5 minutes. So in we went, and close to an hour, a bit over an hour later, we came out to an ashen-faced barrister, doesn't know what she said. Her solicitor was in there with her during the interview, but the interview sort of went from, I think she really had a lot to say, but it wasn't about what she'd done. It was about what had happened to her during her life.
Did you put the information to her that this is what we've found, and when we've come into the premises, you're asleep in the bed, and card, all that?
Yes, nothing was
put it all to her.
Nothing was not put to her, nothing at all. But and because the allegation had to be there, for her allegedly, us thinking that she was going to say, "Look, I've got no idea what happened. I've got nothing to say." Just. But she just started to talk about. This is, I can tell you what's happened to me over the years, and I don't know, I can't remember that word for word in the interview, but basically the crux of the story was that she'd been through a number of relationships. She had a very hard upbringing as a child, had a father who was abusive towards a mother, sexually and physically, with assaults, almost on a daily basis, and moved on to her relationships through the years of one marriage and then 3 male partners afterwards.
Right.
And basically, I just kept it going. Well, tell me about it, you know. And it was probably after we got to the second partner after her husband, John Chillingworth. And mind you, she had children to all of these first 3 men before John Price. And I thought, well, just let her go. And that's what she. And then it started to twig. Well, if this is the case, there can be 2 scenarios. Either these things really happened to her, which forced her to say, "Look, I've snapped. I've had enough of this. I'm not going to go through this again with John Price, and I'm going to fucking get him."
Yeah.
You know, or she's leading me down a path of, I'm a battered wife, and this is what's happened to me. And
trying to build a defence.
And this is what she's going to present at trial. So you just got to let the interview go the way it goes, you know. But as far as what she'd actually done, couldn't remember. Had no idea. I don't remember that.
Okay.
But I had a woman who could remember finite details as she told me about what happened to her through her life with her male partners, husband and male partners over the years, but no, not even the sheer resemblance of what took part 3 nights earlier to what happened to John Price.
Selective memory loss. It's always interesting.
Yeah, well, but at the time you've got to take it on that. But you've obviously been through it. But when you interview someone, you spend a lot of eye contact with them, you know, and generally not a lot comes out of that, especially when someone's saying, "I can't remember things." But sometimes you might have a pause and a little bit of a break, and you'll just catch their eye with your eye. And I did it on one occasion. It happened to me, and it left me with an impression that she knows. She's just not going there. Never going to go there. It's a movement of the eye, and it's a swallow it's just a facial expression that they make, that you know that I could spend days here continuing with this stuff, but I'm never going to get her to say, "Yeah, I murdered him," or "I killed him," or "I did this," or "I did that" on that night. It was never going to go there. So I just had to take it to the end of what she wanted to tell me.
Yeah.
About what happened to her, and leave me with a reason as why she might have done what she done, even though she wouldn't admit to it.
Okay, well that's all you can get in those circumstances.
Yeah.
You touched on there that you got that glimpse, and I know that subtle body movement or something that you picked up that this is I know you know.
Hadn't to lend to me
Yeah.
a little bit.
What was your overall impression of her? Did she come across as a normal person, like to be guilty of a crime like that, or capable of committing a crime like that? Did she give off an unusual vibe to you when you were speaking to her, or how did she present?
It was a little bit like Jekyll and Hyde, where Jekyll had a lot of things happen to them in their life, and Hyde says, I haven't done anything.
Yeah.
So it was that sort of interview and that sort of thing. But look, she was in stature, she quite a tall woman,
yeah,
quite strong looking, hardened, never broke down at all when she spoke, even when she spoke about what had happened to her in the past. It was just like, this has happened to me, and I don't know whether she was maybe giving but I got through that because I'm tough, or it was just a weird feeling. So I ended that interview with, well, what have I got here? I think I've got a defence being presented to me of where this is going to go when it gets to trial.
Yep.
Because I said, this is definitely going to trial, And so it was the battered wife syndrome that, and look, if that was the case, I had to go and investigate that matter to see if it was that case.
Yeah, well, you've got to rebut or
exactly.
gather that evidence.
Well, and to be fair to everybody, you've got to be fair as fair to them as you can to be as fair to everybody else.
Yeah.
Everybody else deserves fairness in all these sorts of things, and that's where you go. And that's where I had to go. So off I was getting ready to off I go.
Yep. Speaking to her ex-partners, people that know her.
Yes. Yep.
And did it come back like the way that she was representing?
No, it didn't.
So
when I presented, there was 4 male people that were in this scenario.
Yeah.
Her first husband, David Kellett. Her second de facto partner, David Saunders. Her third, John Chillingworth. And there was Price. Apart from Price, the first 3 were a lot smaller men.
Yeah.
All very similar, but good workers, big drinkers. And that's, loved the beer.
That was
7 days a week, but that was their life. But they all worked. But they were all similar stature, the same. And all very similar in character, So to interview them all was to have a complete opposite picture.
Yeah.
And a lot of what they told me was backed up with medical evidence, Like I remember David Saunders said to me, he said, mate, I put it in his statement. He said, I was a bit frightened, but he said not that frightened to begin with, but she could snap very easily, and we'd have a lot of verbal arguments. But he said, I remember one night I came home and she ironed me out. He said, I came home from the pub, he said, and when I say late, he said I wasn't hours late. He said I didn't stagger in at 4 a.m. He said I came in 20 minutes late. And when I say she ironed me out, she was standing behind the kitchen door as I came in, and as I turned around to see her, that's the last thing I remember, because she's hit me with the steam iron in a fist, broke my jaw in multiple places. I woke up in Musselburgh Hospital wired up like a,
Was she charged with that?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Whether he decided to bet on with that assault.
Yeah, he mightn't have.
It could have. I can't remember.
Yeah.
And John Chillingworth was the next, and then after there was another incident with Saunders about 12 months later where he was late home from the pub again, not extremely late. His dog had just had a litter of pups, and as he got home, she came out the back and she held one of the pups and cut its head off in front of him. And she said, if you fucking come home late anymore from the pub, you'll get the same thing.
That's creepy.
That's creepy. That was the last straw.
I wouldn't be coming home after that.
That was the last straw.
Yeah.
That was the last straw for David Saunders. He was out
Makes
of there.
sense.
He said, I snuck out that morning at 2 a.m. with what clothes I was wearing and left.
Best decision he's made.
And he had to leave his daughter, a young daughter, behind with her because that's the way it was. And then, she just then moved straight on to John Chillingworth.
Did he have a story like that?
Basically, he said I was assaulted a lot. And he had a little bit of that man thing about him where he's trying to not make himself look weak, I guess. But he said, she would just attack me in the car while I'm driving and pull my glasses off and twist them up and break them and throw them out the window and all those sorts of things and just lay into me and punch. And he was quite a passive sort of guy, Johnny. So I would never hit a woman. Yeah. He said, no, I suffered black eyes. I did, and there was medical evidence. I had to go to hospital one time and be treated for I think a broken nose or something. But he said, I've actually got a pair of old glasses here. This all went into the brief. I've got a pair of glasses, took my face and screwed up. I had to wear them sort of a bit weird until I got a new set of glasses. But he said, for some reason, I've always hung on to them. So that went in the brief. That was an exhibit. There's all those sorts of things.
So you're building up a case here, and that you're rebutting the evidence or the things that she told you and showing it to be completely the opposite.
And I can only run the brief on what she told me in that interview.
Yeah.
And what the other witnesses said, but basically to interview her and get the opportunity to interview her. But, you always wanted to know why.
Why would you do that?
Why would you do that? Why would you do that?
Yeah.
And that is with an exclamation mark, that.
The post-mortem examination and the forensic pathologists, and I'm sure this would have formed part of the brief. How difficult is it to skin a person?
It's done in 4 cuts, but complete.
Yeah.
Altogether.
And how long would it take? And what sort of...
Well, I guess that's a question for a skilled filleter or boner.
Yeah.
Because she was an abattoir worker.
Right, okay. Well, that's the type of thing that I'd
She was very skilled with knives.
Okay.
Very skilled, and loved her knives.
Yeah.
Her first husband, David Kellett, when they were married, she attacked him the first night they were on their wedding night.
Yep.
Gave him a bit of a hiding because he only had sex 3 times on their wedding night, where she was told by her mother that her father had sex 6 times with her mother on their wedding night.
So he fell short.
He fell short, so he said, mate, flog me, beat me. And she used to mount the knives above the bed. Loved knives. Loved the knives. So...
Talk about red flags or warnings.
Eventually he left.
Yeah.
They had a couple of children together. And then John Chillingworth, they had a boy, him and Katherine Knight. But John was the same. He said, it just got me in the end. He said, all the ways I could work out to try and pacify never worked. He said, it just got me down, so I just left. Had to leave my young bloke.
Okay. How long into the investigation from the time of the murder did you form the view that she's going to be charged? She
was charged that day.
Okay, so
after the interview, Phil Lloyd was waiting outside, and because look, it was a homicide. We knew she'd committed this homicide because there was too much physical evidence.
Yeah,
like there was no other explanation.
Yeah.
She'd done it, and I was quite confident that after the interview that she needed to be charged.
Yeah,
and some form of custody decision made.
Yeah.
For her. So it was actually Phil Lloyd and I drove her back. We said to the hospital, does she require any hospitalisation any longer? No, she's right to go. So we drove her to Newcastle Police Station, where she was formally charged.
Charged there?
Yeah.
Bail refused?
Bail refused, yeah, and she remained bail refused. I'm not sure whether she made any concerted attempts really through the Supreme Court to get bail, but...
When did you're running the investigation, so you got a lot of things happening. Was it the point of when she was charged and the facts were presented to the court? When did it hit the media? Because I remember it, but I was in the cops, so we were hearing it sort of direct. When did it hit the media?
The cops event went through. Well, look, in a little town like Aberdeen, the press were there. The press were there by the afternoon.
Yeah.
Actually, the press were there by lunchtime.
Yeah.
Really. Because they've got police scanners, they can hear what's going on.
But did they know the nature of the crime scene?
They knew it was a fairly horrific murder.
Right.
They weren't really aware of... The press had worked out
something
bad, and it was a bad murder. It wasn't good. But once the facts hit court, probably 3 days later, that's when it was like front page news.
Yeah.
And that's like when she was going for just a routine court hearing, because everything was through the Muswellbrook court.
Yeah.
At that stage, until they could get it back to Newcastle, really.
Yeah.
It made it easier for custody reasons and different things and transportation. But by then, it was any time she was making an appearance at court, there was wall-to-wall cameras.
Yeah.
And photographers and reporters, and so it was a big deal because it was a big deal because that's those sorts of things. we're going back 24 years ago. Even in Australia, it wasn't. Well, worldwide, it's not a big thing. And of course, we know how the press like to they up the ante on things. And she was known as the Australia's Hannibal Lecter. She was known as this. She was known as that. And that mainly came through the fact that once the facts did hit court, they realised that the head in the pot. They realised that she'd removed parts of his rump and baked it in the oven and cooked vegetables with his head and then dished up 2 plates of his rump and vegetables and put 2 of John Price's children's names on those plates, meals. So once that was found out by the press, they really went into overdrive. Australia's Hannibal Lecter. She's this, she's that.
She wanted to feed his kids.
Yeah.
Him.
I don't know if she actually wanted to, but the meals were prepared.
They were prepared, and
the kids often came round.
Okay.
But that's part of Gary. That's part of the why. Why do that? And the word that in it's why kill someone, but why that? That extra yard, that's the full 9 yards.
And I think the question you're asking yourself, I am, and is why everyone's sort of fascinated by this. It's just so bizarre.
Yep, it was strange.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
there's been mutilation, murders, and different things, but this was out of the box. It was.
Yeah.
No,
well, you've been in the cops long enough, so have I. We've seen the brutality of murder scenes, but this is just it's not just killing the person; it's post activities that really is quite concerning. How long before she pleaded not guilty?
Pleaded not guilty.
Okay. How long did it take to get to trial?
Oh, look, I think it was within the 18 months.
Yeah.
It was set down for East Maitland District Court. That's where our local court was going to be.
Yep.
We impanelled the jury. Took a little while because there was a few people in the jury that they were from my hometown. I know Detective Wells. I've known him since he was that big. Can I get out of this? That's what jurors do.
Yeah.
See you, Mrs. Lee. And these people that I knew, so they were out. So Frank O'Keefe was the Supreme Court Justice, Johnny's father. He was I thought a great judge in this matter. But after the panel of the jury, we were ready to go, and there was an application made that in the absence of the jury, then they were just going through the formalities.
Yep.
As they do with the Crown and the defence, and the defence made an application that when the crime scene evidence goes in, and especially the crime scene video, that the accused be exempted from being in court. And, of course, Frank O'Keefe wouldn't have any part of it. He said, no, she will be in here. She will be in here for that. For any other evidence that goes before this court in relation to this matter, the accused will be in the court. And that's I think that was a little bit of a hard blow to take.
Yep.
And on instructions, I think that night, we came back to court the next day ready to go with our first witness, was an application in that they were prepared to plead to murder.
Yeah.
And of course, as you know, with a guilty plea of murder, we still had to present all the evidence with a number of witnesses. So because Frank O'Keefe is the explainer of the court, I want to be 100% sure this woman has committed the murder as a judge for sentencing. So it was basically just like a trial without a jury. But it was I put most of the evidence in as the officer in charge of the case. The crime scene guys did their bit, and but every exhibit, every bit of evidence went into was presented and tagged into that court matter, and she was present for the whole lot of it, especially the crime scene video. With another application was made, well, now it's no longer a jury. Can we excuse the accused from going through this? And he said, no, she's going to go through it. So we played the crime scene video to the court, and probably about 3 minutes into it, she became physically upset, started to rock backwards and forwards, and then started to rock more, started to murmur, make strange noises, started to weep, then started basically to rock uncontrollably and till she collapsed on the floor in a state of hysteria. So another adjournment, and but Frank O'Keefe, to his credit, said, "Go on, compose her, because the accused will be here whilst that evidence goes in." Anyway, in the end, she sat through it, got through it, but it was a plea of guilty, so it sort of lessened that.
Okay, so there was no insanity or mental health issues that she tried to present in the defence?
Not really, no.
She was
no,
fit
there
to
was
stand
evidence
trial?
presented that she was suffering borderline personality disorder,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of the population suffers a form of borderline personality disorder, but it was presented in fairness to her upbringing and what she'd been through. But that's a sentence hearing. You'll always have a sentence hearing where they'll do their utmost best to
paint them in
to
the
present
best.
it, and they presented a fair argument. But I think in the end, Justice Frank O'Keefe was satisfied that she'd committed this horrific murder.
Yeah.
She'd shown no remorse. She'd shown no cooperation in relation to how or why that it happened. And I think that was presented in his judgment in the way that he presented it, to say that, society can do with you being incarcerated until the day you pass away.
Yeah.
And mark the papers never to be released, which is what she became, the first woman in Australia to have her papers marked never to be released.
I think it makes everyone feel a little bit safer.
Yeah, I guess if you present present her as a danger to society, I think she was more a danger to the people who became personally involved with her, especially romantically. But but he was the sentencing justice, and he thought that would be the best thing for the community as a whole.
Well,
because you can progress.
Sorry?
You can progress as a murderer.
Yeah, yeah. But, I think, again, breaking back or stepping back to the crime, if there's a murder, if it's a crime of passion, anger, revenge or whatever, it's the activities that carried on after the murder that take it into that different realm. That's why we're sitting here talking about what's happened rather than someone that was murdered 20 years ago.
And most of my stuff is supposition. I surmise, was it because she'd reached the end of I've been through 3 failed relationships, whether it be my fault or his fault or their fault or whose fault, it's not going to happen to me again. And if it does, because he'd actually decided to break it off with her. He said, look, we're done. That's out. Yeah. And then a couple of times she'd always come back when he'd had a few beers, and then they'd actually had sex the night of the murder.
Right. Okay.
And she had gone and washed herself in the shower, and the black negligee was on the dresser, and there was evidence where she'd
was that all
cleaned herself down
by the forensic evidence?
Well, she'd washed herself down in the shower when there was body parts of his flesh found in the shower that she'd obviously. It was a really frenzied attack, and she was never ever. And then there's another thing where you shower and clean yourself up from. It's another way of. And watching all of these horror movies, maybe some certain ideas are in her head. How do you cover up a crime? How do you not show that you were there, or different things? But at the end, she did return to the scene. Yeah. And overdosed and was probably going to write, but thinking, well, I'm never going to wake up. Yeah. But she didn't kill herself.
Like I'm lost for words on the whole thing. It's just a crime that really shocks people, the nature of it. And how did you have dealings with John Price's family? Like, how did they feel about it? Did he have people close to him? Or
they're very sorry. His son idolised him. Yeah, John Jr. Yeah. Even his first wife still idolised him to it. There was never any. And she was such a passive lady. She said, look, and her evidence was he's just such a passive man. But she said, and it was his passiveness probably that ended their relationship, because he just didn't have a lot to get up and go about him, Yeah. Never violent, never. And she moved on from that, wanted a bit more, I guess. And lovely lady. All the children were lovely kids, and they were yeah, they're forever now known as the children of the guy who had this horrific thing happen to him.
Yeah, it's a hard thing, isn't it? And we shouldn't forget the family and the people close to him that it would impact, and to have a loved one killed in that manner must be terrible for them. Did she have any people supporting her at court?
I think the daughters were there from memory, but there was no outward emotion.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were there.
Yeah.
They were there. I think general support. The Salvation Army lady was there, those sorts of things.
But not
a sister and those sorts of things. But they were not overt in anything within the courtroom.
They were there because it was the appropriate thing to be.
They were there because they were there.
Yeah.
But they were there.
Okay.
And I sort of think, they were also taken aback as well. They were a little bit shocked that she had done what she'd done, but they were there. They were there.
How did this investigation impact on you?
Oh, it's never left me, Gary, really. I live with it every day. It's one of those things, and when I was still in the job, it was such a huge thing for the media.
Yeah.
And not that I wanted to particularly become involved in that side of it, but everybody wanted a piece of it, and there was shows and there was international shows and there was different things. And in those days when I was still in the job, I had no choice but taking those, because the Commissioner of Police would say, well, you will be interviewed.
Yeah.
That's...
You had to get approval and
you do as you're told. So I did as I told. I'm no longer in there, but it's I still see a psych every month.
Yep.
Not because of this particular case. I mean, it was just the straw that broke the camel's back as far as my mental health went. But I sort of, as we spoke earlier in the show about, I didn't realise until years longer that was the first chip that happened early in my career, and it just wears you down. You've been there.
Yeah.
A lot of the guys and girls listening to this today, they've been there, and it's what coping mechanisms you put into place to just deal with your life.
Yeah.
Probably it has affected me emotionally. It has affected my character. It's made me not probably sometimes the greatest person to be around.
Yeah.
But I've just got people who care about me, and they stick close. And but it's not just Katherine Knight's matter that's left me in the position. I mean, I've been diagnosed as a severe chronic PTSD. Chronic means it's just there forever.
Yeah.
Severe means it's not great. But it's about the coping mechanisms and just how you deal with it, and the psychological help that I get just keeps me going.
You because you had a break after this, and you didn't leave the police, but you took time off.
Yeah, I took a bit of sick leave, and I really dabbled with the idea of not going back to work.
Yeah.
But it was unfinished business, because that was before. This is while the matter was still live. By the time I'd finished the investigation, and the brief was done, and the DPP had it, and I'd done the last requisition. Requisitions.
I remember requisitions. They usually come in on a Friday night.
Yeah. So, and there's normally about 20 items on
it.
And so by the time, and I thought, well, this is it. Maybe I've just got to have a break. So I went off sick for a while, and I'd actually transferred from Singleton and Hunter Valley Command to take up a position as one of the tag units were being brought in as of the 1st of July 2000. So I was asked to take a team leader role in one of those tag groups being developed for the Hunter region.
And just explain to people what the tag is.
They were the new units set up as a target action group to target specific areas of crime around, like a bit of a mobile sort of.
If there was a lot of breaking enters in an area, target
same
that.
thing.
Yeah.
A bit of drug work needed to be done, those sorts of things. You could be utilised, and it was a region utilisation, so you could be used go to Tweed, go up to the North Coast, anywhere, and basically a support unit as well as anything else. And it was a little bit of an area for aspiring plainclothes guys to come into. if they were thinking about that, go and have a trip to the tag. If I like that style of work, maybe, well, I don't like it, I'll go back to my general duties, or I'll go to the high patrol.
Yeah.
So that's what those units were for. So it was that period that I took a bit of sick leave and dabbled with the idea that I'm not going to go back to work. But I thought, no, not only have I got to see this matter through, the night matter, I'm just not done with work.
Yeah.
And I'm not done with a work life, not just because it was the police or that job. I wasn't done with a work life to present a person to my children.
Yeah. That
I just haven't given up on. I'm not going to take a pension and look like a pensioner in my 40s. You know. That's not. I had this little thing in the back of my head that said that doesn't present a good example to your children, and so that sort of drove me on as well. So I did another 10 years in the cops.
Yeah.
After Katherine Knight, before I decided that it just was time.
Now's the time.
It was close to 32 years, and I thought, I've given it my best shot. I've done a lot of things in the job. I've got no regrets. The journey was everything I expected, and probably a little bit more. And so I thought, I don't really need this stress anymore.
Right.
Yeah, so it was time to...
No, it's interesting because the fact that you identified you had that problem, you took time off, and you came back and put another 10 years in. That doesn't often happen. Quite often you see people, it becomes that they put their hand up one time and then get some help and then come back and then feel like it's not for them. But another 10 years. Well, how long in the cops did you spend?
Just under 32.
Right, okay.
Years.
So you put in the big numbers.
Put enough in. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I don't think people see it as a career these days anymore, like we spoke earlier. Some do, but generally, a lot of people would give it a crack for 5 years. A lot of the younger generation, but like that with a lot of jobs.
Yeah.
They'll do things something for 5 years and say, well, I've done this, I'll move on and try something else.
But what saddens me at current times, and that we're not just talking New South Wales police, it's across the country and the federal police, they can't attract people to policing. And I sit down with you and talk about your career and have a laugh, a cry and everything else that goes on with policing. But it's such a good career. And we can't attract people.
And I've met some wonderful people in this organisation. Yeah. Wonderful people, I've met a lot of people who weren't suited to the job.
Yep.
Sometimes I don't know whether I really was suited or not, but I enjoyed my journey and my trip through it. Would I recommend it to my children or my grandchildren? Probably not.
Okay.
Probably not. Because I don't want to see them go through that long-term pain at the end of it if it doesn't work out for them.
Yeah, no, that's I can understand where you're coming from. When I'm asked whether people should join the police or go down that path, I say from my point of view, yeah, I love the job, but understand it will change you. It'll change you as a person, whether that's a better or a worse. You don't know until you've gone there. It'll
change you very quickly too.
True.
I'm saying that's to my children.
Yeah.
But if someone wants to have a heart-to-heart sit down and look, I'm thinking of joining the cops, I'd say, well, mate, you've got to, if you want to have a crack, have a crack.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it for my children because I don't want to, But if someone's got to join it, someone's got to do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got to be done. It's something that we can't say, well, it's...
And it's, from your point of view, it's worthwhile, isn't it? You feel like you're doing something worthwhile. You look back at your career and... Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, well, I do think so. Yeah,
you make a difference in whatever little way, but you're making a difference. What caused you? And I know we've talked as old cops do or old ex-cops tend to do, and talk about the problems with the job. It's not like our day and all that sort of stuff. What caused you more stress, the investigations or management?
A bit of both.
Yeah,
but management. I've never been in a the highest management level I reached was for 3 years at the region office in getting close towards the end of my career. Was I filled in a relieving capacity as a inspector in charge of the Northern Region Internal Affairs section.
Yeah.
So, but never ever got confirmed in the position.
Yeah.
So I did it. So I realised I could do that.
Yeah.
I was never stopped because I was able to do that job. I was stopped because eventually there was someone with a bit of sadness in another area needed a position to be filled, so they plonked in and moved me back to my substantive position. So as soon as I couldn't do it, I did it. So
Come on,
to
Bob. It was 3 years.
To myself, I was job satisfied in that. But but management. And we talk about the night matter. It was a bit of a stumbling block, and sometimes people get paid quite substantial money in this organisation to make a decision.
Yeah.
Yet sometimes it seems to be so hard for them to make that decision. And the problem I was faced with Knight, there was a lot of work to be done after that interview. A lot of work to be done. A lot of statements to be obtained. A lot of evidence to be gathered. And a lot of which was going to take a lot of travel to track people down, interview them, get them on paper. And because I was in that transfer stage from the Hunter Valley Local Area Command to the regional offices, it became. I went to the bosses.
No one owned you.
Listen, this is a situation. This has got to be done. Oh, right. What do you need? Well, I need to go and interview these people. Oh, where are they? I said, well, they're all over the place. They're not all living in the one street next to each other. I said, there's some are in Coffs Harbour, some are in Moree, some are in the south coast, some are out west, some are in Newcastle, some are in the Hunter Valley. But right. So what do you need to do? I said, well, I just need a motor vehicle and a laptop and a car. Yeah, a car and a laptop. Thanks very much. Oh, well, who's going to give you the car? I said, sorry, but if I could make my own decisions, I'd just go and get one, but I can't. You've got to make the decision. I need a car, and I need some travelling allowance, and I need a laptop. Right. Well, who's going to give you that? That's what I'm asking you for. It's your decision, not mine. And it was really disheartening to see these people
there to make decisions that can't make decisions.
Get paid the big bucks that can't make a decision.
I think with leadership...
And it was all about dollars, Gary. It was all about the almighty dollar.
Jesus, Bob, haven't you worked out now that you can look very good in your application if you've saved the organisation money?
Yes, wonderful.
That's you could have gone so much higher if you just realised that. Look, I don't want to come across as a cynic with police. We enjoy it. It's a robust organisation. We have our fun. We take the piss out of each other, and criticise the bosses and vice versa.
Yep.
But in leadership, the thing that would frustrate me is the leaders that are getting paid to lead us. That's the structure of the police, paid to lead us, that couldn't make decisions. I don't always agree with decisions, but sometimes at crunch time, when the pressure's on, you need someone to make a decision. And when you've got a boss there that won't make a decision one way or the other, that's the worst type of leadership. Make a decision.
Be it right or wrong.
Be it right or wrong. Take the consequences. But I'll respect you if you make a decision.
Yes.
It's the ones that couldn't make a decision and just sort of sit back and watch, see if it all blows up, and then they'll come in after and take credit if it's success. Or
distance if it's not.
Yeah,
but anyway,
I know.
But that was probably the most disappointing thing about the whole brief, was just that it was easy stuff to do, but it just needed a bit of travel to do it, and it was and that took time to get that decision to be made, and it's. At the time, you see that as time that you don't really have,
Yeah.
In the end it was, but it was got on with it. But it's frustrating. That's the main thing. You just walk out of those scenarios thinking to yourself, like, it's just, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
It's not, I didn't want $1 million, mate. I just wanted a car with some fuel and with a fuel card and a bit of TA and go and wrap this thing up.
Yeah, no, I understand your frustration with it. Your life now, post cops, you enjoying yourself?
I think so. Yeah, I've discovered a bit of travel. I never liked flying.
Well, you're racking up the points now from what I'm hearing.
So I'm racking up a few air miles now. Yeah. My wife and I we've been to Europe a couple of times. So a couple of nice little trips. We've got grandkids and kids in the UK that we visit. My wife's a Kiwi, so she's got family there. We jet across the ditch quite often, those sorts of things. But yeah, things are pretty good. We've got a lot of grandkids that keep us hopping.
Yeah.
Bit of babysitting, plenty of sports with the older grandkids, bit of footy, bit of netball, those sorts of things. So we're very busy, and I think that's what helps you get through those sorts of things.
Sounds like you're living the good life.
Well, I'm doing my best.
Yeah, you're doing pretty.
Doing my
pretty
best,
well.
but I still have my moments,
Yeah.
Those sorts of things. So with the psych and my missus, she keeps me on the straight and narrow as best as I can. But yeah, look, she's a great travel companion. We seem to get on exceptionally well when we're travelling.
Well, I saw you both turn up this morning, and you look like you've been getting on well.
That's when we become stationary and hang around the house a little bit. The things get a bit
that's
strange.
why you're travelling.
Yeah, so that could be the case. But anyway, no, look, things are pretty good. Yeah, I'm never going to be 100%.
Yeah.
Emotionally and mentally, and that's just a fact of life, But in saying that, I'm not Robinson Crusoe on that boat. On that boat, there's plenty of others, and there's some worse off than me. So I just,
Well, full credit to you to have the honesty to talk about it, and also, dealing with it. It's you're dealing with it. You're acknowledging it, and you're making the best of the situation.
Oh, mate, I know I can be cranky and hard to get along with, but that's part of what it does to you.
Yeah.
And who knows? Had I not joined the cops, I may have ended up like that. I don't know. But I can only say how it affected me, and that's it chips away at you.
That's what you carry.
And it just wasn't Katherine Knight. I was well in trouble before.
That was just a tip over point.
I was well in trouble before that brief came along.
Yeah.
100% for sure that. So yeah.
Okay.
And most people are by the time they get. It's around that 20 years. If you're fully operational.
Yeah.
Up to 20 years, you're starting to feel the heat a bit.
And that constant pressure. I do understand what you're talking about. But, well, we might wrap it up at this point. But I just want to thank you, Bob, for service to the community. And I mean that, like 30 years in the cops, and the stuff that you've done, you've picked the ball up and run with it. So full credit to you on that. Thanks for being the type of cop that I think we need too. A practical approach to policing, and you're obviously a people person, and I think that carries a lot of weight in policing, and it makes everyone's job that much easier. I remember you from the detectives course, and you were someone that got on with people, and that communication, that helps a great deal.
There were some good people in that course, and I really enjoyed it. But there's some great people in the cops,
Yeah.
Friends forever, friends for life. It's good. Thanks, Gary.
All right, and thanks for making the way to come here on I Catch Killers.
Not a problem.
All the best for the future.
Thanks very much. Same to you.
Enjoy your travels.
Thank you.
Cheers. The murder of John Price by Katherine Knight is one of the most macabre and bizarre murders I've heard about in my entire time in homicide. It was good to have the officer in charge of the investigation, Bob Wells, a person I did the detectives course way back in 1990, sitting down and talking us through that investigation, and also going over the rest of his police career. There's some crimes that leave an indelible impression on you, and that's one that's certainly left an impression on Bob, but full credit to him. He's a country cop. He spent most of his time in the country, and you can see why he was valued in the community, and full credit to him. And I had a great time catching up with an old friend.